Hello and welcome. I'm going to show you how to create data tables in this video. So here we are in our Excel scenarios worksheet. I have the event planning sheet open and I'm taking a look at the data. So this is for planning an event and budgeting that event, trying to figure out the number of attendees you might need, how many might use valet parking, and all of the various costs that go into planning and hosting an event. Right now we have some basic calculations to do before we get into the data tables. First of all, we need to calculate the ticket revenue. So we've got the number of attendees and the price for each ticket. The valet, the meal, all of that's going to be included in the price. You can see that we're assuming 50% of the attendees will use valet. We're going to do a little bit of a test on that to see whether that's a reasonable expectation and what our balance will be at the end. We're also going to look at the variable number of attendees that could come and also the price per ticket. As you can see, we've got our limitations. So we're saying there's a maximum of 100. There's only 240 parking stalls. So that has to be half of our attendees or somewhere around there. The maximum and minimum ticket price. So let's look at our ticket revenue. So we've got our number of attendees. And right now we're saying, yeah, I think around 400 people will be attending. So let's set our ticket price to $75 per person. That will give us a revenue of $30,000. This is a union sponsored event, so we've got some member contributions as well. And so we're going to have a total income for this event of $30,000 plus $8,500. In terms of our expenses for advertising, ballroom rental, etc. And I'm going to put my calculation for expenses in this column C here, so it's really separated out and it will help me when I'm doing my calculations for the data table. So we've got a sum of all of our costs or expenses like this. And then the balance, of course, is we want to break even on this event. It is not an event to raise money. So the income that we have generated from ticket sales and member contributions minus our expenses gives us a negative value of 590. We want to get to a break-even point. So we need to play around with some of the values to see how we can get there. And that's where data tables come in really handy. You can see I've got them set up here in columns E to H, and then below there's a two-variable data table. We'll start with the first one. So I want to look at a variable number of attendees who might be coming to this event. The maximum number is 500, but what if only 250 attendees show up? And so I want to look at varying inputs. So what if we have somewhere between 250 and 400 attendees? So you can see I've got that. What will that do to our income? How much income will we generate? How will that affect our expenses? Now this is going to be relevant because valet parking is a calculation that includes the number of attendees based on the percentage using valet and the price per valet. So that will affect this calculation and our expenses. And then the balance, so how much will we be left with, either a deficit or a positive amount. So I'm going to reference here at the top of my variable table in the row those calculations. So I just use the equal to sign and then reference the calculation. Now what's really important here is that this calculation has this variable included, and so that means that the number of attendees here, this calculation, this cell B4, is included in the calculation for total income. Because when I change the calculation with those variable inputs, I need to see the change in the output. And then we're going to be looking at the expenses. And then finally, how will the change in number of attendees affect our balance? So I've got my three calculations that I just referenced using cell references here. And now we're going to get into the data table tool. So selecting the range, including this blank cell in the top corner in a one variable data table, you can use as many calculations as you like here in the row, but this top cell corner here in the left needs to be blank. And then under the data tab, I'm going to go to what if analysis and select data table. Now I have my inputs here in the column E. It doesn't really matter what column, but it's important to know how you've set up your data tables. So I'm not putting my inputs in a row, I'm putting them in a column. Therefore, I need to select the column input cell from the original calculation. So I'm saying from all of these calculations, they use cell B4. Input the data in the column from my one variable data table into this cell B4 so that we can get the different outputs, the different calculations based on those varying amounts that I've added here. Click OK, and you'll get the options. So you can see the balance will range anywhere from really negative to what we started with. So we definitely won't want to have any less than 400 attendees at this event. And then, of course, you can do some formatting. We can use the accounting formatting and just remove those decimals or play around with it just so it's a little bit easier to read. Let's move on to look at the two variable data table. We have the same scenario, but now we want to see, okay, what if more people use Valet than we expect? And what if we take a look at the price per ticket, so per person? So in a two variable data table, I'm going to use both the row and the column here. So I'm going to only be able to test one calculation. This is really important. And that calculation I'm most interested in is the balance. So the balance is going to go in the top left-hand corner here, different than a one variable data table where that cell is left intentionally blank. And now here I'm going to look at the percentage of people using Valet. Okay, so we're going to test from 40% all the way up to above 50%. So if we put in 0.4 here, and let's do 0.45, or maybe we'll do it by increments of a little bit less so we can do a little more granular analysis. And we'll go all the way up to 62%. I'm going to format this so it looks like a percentage, and then it's a little bit easier to see. And then in our row, now we're in row 21, I'm going to insert various ticket prices. As our limitations say, we can't go above $100. So I'm going to start from 75 and increase by 5. And again, I'm going to select those first two and then continue filling the series using autofill. So again, to create a data table, you need to select the range under the Data tab, under What If, select Data Table. And now we have both a row, so that's row 21 is our inputs there that are going to be inserted for our ticket price per person, B9, in our calculations. And then our column, where we're going to replace these percentages, is going to be in B5, where we've got that percentage amount. So again, we're looking at options. What if we charge $90 per ticket? What if 50% of the people use Valet? How is that going to affect our balance? Well, it's going to be really positive. We're going to be way above our budget, but we want to break even. So in fact, we're looking more at our 42%. If 42% of the people are using Valet and we still keep that ticket at 75%, that's really the closest break-even point. The last thing I want to show you here is how you can use conditional formatting to highlight these cells. So under Home, we've got our conditional formatting, and I really like to use the color scales. They really help highlight the data and the cells. You can play around with which one you want to use. The other ones that are really nice are the data bars, sort of showing you again, highlighting, where the revenue would be really high versus where we're looking more at a balance or a negative. If we do top and bottom, you can choose the top 10%, so that's going to be there, or you can even play around with that and say, what's the 5%? Those are going to be our highest revenue generating options if we have. Okay, I hope that was a good introduction. As you work through the assignment this week, you can come back to this video and take a look at how to complete these tasks, as well as I'll provide other resources for you to keep learning.